Give us a little bit about your introduce about yourself, what you guys are doing about this topic. Anna?
Oh, okay. So basically, I'm here to talk about wellness and well-being, not just for the players, but for everybody who's part of the ecosystem and all the stress that's put on everybody who's part of the ecosystem with all the games that are demanded of the players these days and everyone who's touched. And part of that, the coaches, the organizations.
Thank you, Anna. What about you, Betsy?
So for me, I'm here representing some creative ways that leagues and clubs can maybe embed some ways in order to create a better schedule amongst a few other things in order to sustain and support players' overall health and well-being.
What about you, Johnny?
And I'm a lawyer by training, but one of my roles with the MLSPA is I'm our office lead on all issues and matters that have to do with player health and safety. So this is a very salient topic for us right now.
Thank you. I will start with you, Johnny. Recently, we know that FIFA has already the calendar to 2030. And you know, like the other federations have to adjust them to FIFA calendar. When it comes to you representing MLS players, how do you are facing this reality right now?
So for us, it's you know, this is a global issue, but it affects I think the different regions differently. For us, you know, the match calendar is in MLS, it's very uneven. So you may have players in teams playing just maybe a smattering of games in the beginning of the season, but then towards the end of the season, they're playing, you know, three times a week in many cases. And so for us, and part of our policy advocacy at the PA is to do our best to try to advocate to even out that schedule, so that players aren't playing so many back-to-back games, so that they get the proper rest in between matches, so that players that maybe aren't playing very much can get on the field. Whereas with you know, particularly in Europe, many of those players, especially the players that are very active with their national teams, they have a nonstop season. You know, they may get a week or two in between seasons, but oftentimes not even that. So it kind of depends on where you are, but for us, it's in MLS. You know, we have the mandated off season. That's great. That's I think culturally very common within North American professional sports. But it's really just getting that schedule spread out in a way that I think makes sense for players' rest and mental health and physical health.
Yeah, since you talk about Europe, I will use a quote of Pep Guardiola. He recently said, maybe we go to FIFA Club World Cup, arriving the last stage of competitions, and we are going to play almost 70 games this season. Imagine that. Then the reporter replied to him like, oh, this is like NBA games, right? And he answered like, 70 games is like NBA, but in the NBA they have 4 months holidays and we have 3 weeks. So that's exactly what you're telling about this.
Yeah, that's right. It's, you know, it's like, it's what I said, you know, it's part of North American professional sports culture to have built-in breaks that you know, in the work that we do with FIFPro, and that FIFPro is, for those that don't know, is the union counterpart to FIFA. They've recently filed a complaint in the European Court of Justice to do just that, to bring players to the table, to get players advocacy groups at the table, to do some of the things that our players enjoy here, which is mandated breaks, holiday periods, so that it's what I already said, so that players can get the rest that they need, because they're not getting it now in many cases.
Betsy, from the league perspective, from USL, how do you think that can the club and the league combine this schedule in order to preserve the mental health of the players?
Well, we have mandatory time in between games, and so that is important so that they can have the proper recovery. The other thing is that we do have a mandated mid-season mental health time off, and that is 48 hours of time where they are just recovering and they have nothing else to do, and they are there to take care of themselves and their families. So that's built in, so that's extremely important from our view in order to, especially halfway through the season, kind of give them the chance to recover and recuperate. So one of the other things that we are investigating right now is that we are looking at getting a platform that uses algorithms that will make sure when we do our scheduling that it takes in cross-country travel. It takes in, because we are, large country, and traveling East Coast or West Coast can take quite a toll on the body. And so we are looking at platforms that consider those algorithms between all of our clubs so that we can maintain a standard of time in between that offers them recovery. So those are just a few things that we are doing in regards to the scheduling portion.
Amazing. And from your point of view regarding the wellness, do you believe that is like an holistic way for taking care of them in order to preserve all that's happening around? Like they really have the support for the pressure they're suffering through these tournaments?
From my perspective, I'm exposed to the world of soccer, and I understand it from a different perspective and through a different lens. I look at it as these are human beings who are part of this ecosystem, and everyone, no matter what, needs rest and recovery, as already been mentioned. But what's really important to note is that these athletes are under a lot of stress. And stress comes in different forms. There's your acute stress and there's your chronic stress, right? And your acute stress is a really great motivator. It gets you to, your fight or flight. It gets you to do something, take action. But if you have chronic stress and you don't have a chance to recover and recuperate from chronic stress, this is what leads to these diseases. And it goes beyond, your mental wellness, which is really important. And this is what we're talking about right now. Everyone needs that rest and recovery in order to maintain proper mental health, well-being. But it can lead to chronic actual physical disease. Stress is tied back to everything, to cancer, to everything that, as many of us in this room right now, I think from what I can see, we're kind of in that age where we may even be caretakers to someone that's part of our family, or someone that we know that is suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia or from these mentally related diseases, and it all can be tied back to stress. So if we can help our players now to maintain their stress levels and to recover and recuperate in their youth, or in this time, they're going to live a happier, healthier life in the long term.
I think that's a really important point. I think players themselves are often very reluctant to speak up for themselves. My sort of view on this, I don't have a professional playing background, but I spend a lot of time speaking to our members about topics like these, and they recognize they're in a very fortunate position. They don't want to be seen as complainers, as malcontents, either within the team, within the locker room, to the public, and so we have to. The general we, the royal we, have to, I think, do a better job, or really try to make strides to pull them along in that way, to help them remember they are humans, and I think we're doing a better job of that in recent years, but it still is worth reminding everyone of that.
Perfect, Johnny. Talking about you advocate for the players, how do you see, we know that to do it to the schedule, they get injured a lot, right, because of the physical, but how do you see the mental health of them? Because sometimes we don't talk about this, and recently we saw Richarlison from Tottenham talking about the depression he was feeling about all the schedule, all this life they have. How do you see that coming as well for the mental health, not just for the physical?
Yeah, I think before COVID, you started seeing it a little bit more, and then during COVID, coming out of COVID, that's when I saw something of I think a dam break in terms of athletes being willing to open up about it, which from my perspective is great, not only for their coworkers in the locker room, but also for being a mental health advocate for people in general. So that's been something that I've been pleasantly surprised to see players becoming more and more willing to talk about it. Players are becoming, even if they're not willing to talk about it publicly, we have more players coming to us to avail themselves of the resources that we provide for them, that the league provides for them. And from my perspective, that's obviously a great thing. And I honestly wish it would be more. But it has been a little bit heartening to see players be more and more willing to recognize that they're not the robots that I think a lot of people might think they are. They are humans, and so getting them to remember that themselves is only going to help them, I think, in their mental health wellness, physical wellness, which then translates to their on-field performance, which is ultimately what the players want, and then the teams that are employing them want.
We know soccer is getting bigger here in the U.S. and getting major, but comparing to the other leagues such as NFL, MLB, we know they have like different players in a really great level. You don't have this gap in the bench as we still have in soccer. What is for the people of the players that are in the bench? They are not going to the field during the game. How do you feel like they also can eventually get some problem with the mental health because they don't get injured because they are not playing, but they want to play. They're going to get to the field. How do you think about this perspective as well?
Well, that's a good question. I guess my hope is that the more willing that players are willing to speak about the daily stressors of their lives, sort of in general, will spill over to the players that maybe aren't getting the minutes that they want, and will make them more likely or more willing to deal with those own. They're different stressors, but they're stressors nonetheless. And so I guess in a perfect world, that would mean that they are across the bench are becoming more open and willing to do that. Whether that's happening, I don't know that I can speak with a ton of authority on those guys that maybe aren't seeing the field as much, but I do know that in general, players are, like I said before, availing themselves and willing to seek out the help that when they need it.
And Betsy, from the USL perspective, because you have the league that have both gender for women, the National League and the Championship for men, how do you address the different process and stress they get into? Because you know that since they are different genders, we have to address this differently. How do you work with that?
Well, I think in general, kind of globally speaking, is that, the goal is that we want our ownership and our leadership to understand that if they invest in the overall health and well-being holistically of all of their players, that translates to their performance on the field. So that's one piece, is that we need to continue to let everybody across the leagues and within our leagues understand that the players' performance actually increases when they feel like their ecosystem is supporting them holistically. So that's kind of a broad thing. Specifically between men and women, it's not necessarily that we offer different resources, but maybe it's tailored a little differently. And there's also a couple things that obviously between our men's and our women's are dealing with, female responses to stress, as well as additional pieces like pregnancy and those kinds of things that go along with the feminine body. So those are things that you have to consider when you're looking at health and well-being, and the intersection between mental health and that. So that's important to do. And so I think also just letting our female leagues, and our female league president is here, and be very supportive of our teams, and understanding the importance of what we need to offer our women. Not only that, I believe that women are way more acutely aware of their overall health and well-being. And so in general, kind of like what you were saying, Johnny, and that is our women, I think, are more likely to speak up and say that they need some help. And so that's a difference between men and women that we have to address. So that's kind of a piece that we absolutely need to tackle on the men's side.
Yes, and I love when you from Wellness Universe approach as humans before everything. And like talking about maternity leave, for instance, Alex Morgan that recently retired for NWSL San Diego, she's like also a National League player, national team player. She got like this possibility when she was like got pregnant, like what I'm gonna do because we have the schedule and I'm gonna be like 9 months away, and then to breastfeed my baby, and how we'll do that, nurse my baby. So how do you feel about this also approach, not just human, but also in women and men?
That's a really great question, Claudia. And this is a really great dynamic that you brought up, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's things like this that the organizations have to look at the full structure of what they're offering as a true holistic solution. And to Johnny's point, basically, you have to allow also the people, the players, to know what is available to them, for them to know what's available to them, for them to do a self-assessment of where am I really at in my health journey, where am I really at in my mental state, where am I at, and what is available to me. So these are the things, like maternity leave, like helping a woman transition in her mindset, like is she even what am I doing getting pregnant at this point in my life? I'm at the peak of my career. That is a tailspin. That's a tailspin, and it can totally damage your mental health and cause a traumatic, issue. So what can you do just from the beginning of a player getting pregnant through the whole process, through her taking a maternity leave? How do you ensure her that her career is safe for her to come, that will be here for her? I know in Europe, I mean, like regular jobs, there are several countries in Europe that give you 2 years of maternity leave. I mean, it's a systematic situation that needs correction all together, all around. And I'm letting you know now that right now is the time for wellness and well-being, and for the organizations and the clubs that are implementing something now. 5 years from now, it's going to be mandatory. If you do it now, you're going to be way ahead of the curve.
And how do you guys, both of you, think? Because, at the end of the day, money talk, and we need soccer to evolve and to getting bigger, and we love that, we embrace that. But how can you and for that, we have to get more tournaments, right? But how can you just try to balance this calendar? Because I have a feeling like we should have more days in a year for schedule everything. Is that correct? Is that possible? But if you can, what do you have to do? Like, for instance, Johnny, like doing what the other leagues are doing, having more players, like really good players, so they can change every time. Like Real Madrid right now, they have an amazing bench. Like Ancelotti can do whatever he wants, right? Also, that's another point, like the suffering, the pressure is also for the coach, not for the players. And then how can you balance that, like make this possible for everything, like keeping growing, but at the same time preserve the mental health of everybody that's involved in this industry?
Well, I maybe unsurprisingly, as a union lawyer, my solution to that is to bring the stakeholders to the table. And frankly, I think FIFA's done a poor job of that with in this space particularly. They have this dual role where they're the competition organizer, but also the regulator of the entire industry. And so they, you know, they're very willing to add games for their own, you know, for their own purposes that are going to be, that are at the detriment of players' health and safety, but also of the leagues that the players play in. And so that's, you know, I think the Club World Cup, I think was maybe I mentioned it a minute ago, but was the straw that broke the camel's back in this instance.
Yeah, because for this case specifically, both calendar has to stop for 1 month, right? So how can you adjust that, right? That's what you're saying.
Exactly, and at a time when players are already not having the rest that they need, this is yet another competition that they're going to be compelled to play in. So I'll finish your question where I started, which is, you know, there are solutions here. I'm not going to necessarily say I have the solution or the best solution, but I know the way to get to the solution, which is to bring the relevant stakeholders to the table to discuss these issues. And one of those primary stakeholders is the players and the players' representatives. And I think, you know, we see in our own experience with our bargaining with MLS, and you can look to the other leagues in North America. When you get the parties together, they come up with solutions, and that's what they do. The players want to play, the leagues want the players to play. There are solutions to be had. It just is a matter of discussion and getting everyone comfortable with where they are. And if that means there are fewer games organized by FIFA, so be it, I think. But that is all should be a matter of discussion.
What about you, Betsy?
I think one thing that I think everybody in here that's in the soccer industry can acknowledge is that data and metrics has become a part of almost every piece of the game. And there are metrics and there are platforms that record our players' health and well-being and their recovery and all those things, and they're actually being utilized across a number of leagues. And some of those platforms actually keep track of their recovery and then how they play with 24 hours or 48 hours of recovery, and then what their play is like for that very next game, versus if they have 72 hours of recovery, how well do they play? How many minutes are they in the game? So I think that's a really effective tool to help us build based on metrics and data on what is best for our players when it comes to time off and how many games they should play. So that, I think that's a huge push forward. So I think that's an important piece that we'll have to look at going forward.
What about you, Anna? What are your perspective for that?
Well, what's really funny is I actually had a conversation here with someone today at the expo, and they were saying that, and these new generations, the younger generations coming up, they were really self-aware of what life balance is for themselves and what they're willing to spend their time in and what they're willing to commit to. And I heard from someone today that their son plays soccer, and it's just becoming overwhelming to them, and they're not even professional or anything yet, right? So they're like, I'd rather just cut right now from the game and stop playing. So I just think that the more self-aware that people are and their own needs being met or not met, that it's going to reflect on their performance. And to Betsy's point, that just from aside from the metrics and everything that can be measured, which gives us the data, which backs up all of the decision making that we do up until that point, I think that when the people speak and when they say enough is enough, then we're going to have a problem. So something needs to be done right now about it.
I will open for questions. Does anyone want to make a questions for our guests? No one? You?
is there room for that level of engagement? Because in the frameworks that we use currently, these dominant frameworks, we always talk about the traditional stakeholders. We've always had traditional stakeholders. They're not necessarily bringing something new. So who are the non-traditional stakeholders, and is there room for non-traditional stakeholders to perhaps create a different dominant narrative than the existing one currently? Thanks.
I think there's always room. I think it depends on the setting. So if it's the setting of, you know, I'll use MLS and MLSPA as an example. You know, the relevant stakeholders there are the two business entities. If there are there are non-traditional stakeholders, I think would be able to, well, I think it depends on what the setting is, I guess is what I would say there. And you know, for the various stakeholders, I would say it's incumbent on the traditional stakeholders to involve the non-traditional stakeholders as part of those conversations. And so that, I know that's speaking very generally, but I guess that's my initial answer to that, but I need to think about that some more.
I'd like to hop in on that, if that's okay.
Please.
So in my position as corporate wellness and safeguarding, I have a relationship with our PA. I also have a relationship with all of our internal departments, and trying to create the awareness of what wellness is and how it can be integrated in multiple different areas within our league. So I have conversations with our player relations people. They're having conversations about mental health specifically, and mental health and wellness. And so we are able to have conversations back and forth with that department. So as they begin doing negotiations and having conversations with the PA, that they have the awareness that there is some mental health capacities and some health and wellness pieces that they can integrate overall. And so that is one thing that I feel thankful for in my position at the USL, that they are open to those conversations and open to being a little more aware of how that can be integrated within each of the clubs, and specifically in support of the players. So that is one thing I know that we are trying to do from our perspective.
I'd like to chime in on that as well. So just to these points, and this is the most important piece, is the non-traditional stakeholders. Like, who is that person actually affecting aside from themselves when they go home? Their family, their friends, their social circles, the other things that they have commitments to, perhaps their religious organization, their communities. So I think the non-traditional stakeholders actually a huge, huge influence on that person's life, and for those people to really understand what they have access to and what they don't have access to, I think those non-traditional stakeholders actually support them having more access to more help and more wellness.
Absolutely. Just adding to what Johnny said about the kind of, we want to address some issues, but we're not going to come up with all the solutions, unfortunately. But I feel like having this place right now you have here to discuss is also a good start. And like bringing back, because I'm curious, and I want to just ask you guys, if that thing it could be also an opportunity for social programs, for bringing more opportunity for boys and girls that they are willing to become players. So they have tournaments, they have like a perspective, and I came from Brazil, so we have like, there are so many opportunities for boys, they want to play, they don't have, because they don't have clubs there, they just don't go. So maybe they could come to the US or to other countries and use this as an opportunity for them to grow and become amazing athletes. How do you guys see also this as an opportunity when it comes to bring this to society, opportunity for other kids that it's like their dream to become a player? So
you're asking me, Claudia?
I'm going to ask all of you.
It's it's a very big conversation. I mean, I think it's an attractor. It's like when you go to get a job, right? It's obviously what are the benefits that come with the package, right? And it's like that will attract you to the job. And then once you're actually there, what are they doing to fulfill those benefits? What are they doing to fulfill what they're actually offering you, right? And I think that when a young person comes to play for a team and then they really get these wonderful benefits of being supported as a whole human, obviously you're going to get someone who's committed, somebody who's more, and that you're going to have someone that's really committed over the long term. You're going to get the best performance out of them, and then they will take that back. Just like, again, when you work for your organization, for your company, and you say, oh, I love to work for my company, they do this, this, and this for me, then everybody around them in their ecosystem also benefits from that person having the highest sense of support, the highest version of support from that organization or that team that they play for, because you're spending a lot of time there. That's your life. When you're an athlete, that's your life. That's your passion. That's what you're put on this earth for, So, I mean, obviously, it's like kind of a no-brainer.
I think from my perspective, going back to maybe one of my original statements, and that is getting buy-in from ownership and leadership on how important it is to support overall health and wellness of your athlete and how that directly affects their performance. And if we're looking at your question specifically in bringing youth over, and that you would hope that our ownership and leadership can follow that all the way down through the academy system. Mm-hmm. So if they understand and recognize how that is improving the play on the pitch for the pros, you want to hope that they are taking that down through the academy system. And by doing that they can integrate things like social and emotional learning, and so that it's not just about the technique and the skills on the pitch, it's about how you handle the stress of the techniques and the skills on the pitch. And that's got to be incorporated top down. And so I would hope that would be something that we would get to, so that in the academy system, when people come from another country that are coming here to play and learn all about our dynamics here, that would hopefully be something that would be embedded within the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, Betsy, you took the words out of my mouth on that. And really the only thing I would add to it is, from what I see, is the people in those positions that are at the clubs to in a player welfare role or a player care role are very overwhelmed because there's not enough of them. And they do have this mandate to take care of everyone from the first team to the academy kids. And I just don't think there are enough people in those roles to do it. And I see them, when I meet with them, I see them overwhelmed, and I see them wanting to do more, but they just don't necessarily have the resources or the manpower to do what they want to do and implement what they want to do. So if there's anyone in the room in a position to hire more of those people, I would really encourage you all to do that, because again, these things translate onto the field. Yeah. When players are coming from a different country, to use your example, and don't know how to speak the language and can't get an apartment because they don't have a U.S. Social Security number and they don't have any credit, these are real problems that we see every year of players coming in. And when their mind is oh my God, my girlfriend can't get into the country because she doesn't have the right visa, or my 2-year-old doesn't have a doctor because I can't, I only speak Portuguese, whatever the case may be, their mind isn't where the team wants it to be, which is playing to their fullest potential. So these are real problems, and there are solutions there. I think it's just a matter of will to implement those solutions.
Gentleman here.
Mm-hmm.
question is for Mr. Johnny. One of the limitations of the MLS is the regulations, no? Like designated players, the rules that doesn't allow to the league to grow. What is the approach of the association about that issue? Thank you.
I want to make sure I understand your question. And so you're asking how do we parlay the programming and getting support for the programming?
How do you make the differentiation of your specific product, USL, versus Premier League, League MX, etc., with the purpose to get new sponsor and new audience?
I will do my best to try to answer that. So specifically, how we are in the USL as compared to obviously the Premier League and other places, is that we are trying to develop multiple levels, and so across the country and vast, and so being able to have programming that can move from a professional all the way down to an academy and to a youth system. That takes some time. It's not anything that's built overnight, and we have to look at how it is embedded, how it is rolled out, and the audience that we're trying to meet. And all those things are important factors in order to do that. So as kind of what I mentioned earlier, it's not a one-size-fits-all. But how that translates to the other leagues, I'm not sure I can answer that portion of it, if I've answered your question correctly.
And I believe your question was my perspective on the various regulations and rules that are ingrained in MLS. I need to be careful there because the more I speak on that issue, the more trouble I might get into. I think it's, I'm not speaking out of school when I say, we think that we agree there are too many regulations, there are too many rules, specifically around roster construction. We would like to see those rules simplified. We would like to see the money be able to be spent across the roster as teams see fit, not necessarily as the league sees fit. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone who follows MLS or follows, our discussions with the league. I'll leave it there just because we are entering into, or we're getting closer, I should say, to collective bargaining and things like that. So I'll stop there before I lose my job.
Okay, so we are about to end our panel. I just want to the last considerations. As you're saying, we are not going to come up with all the solutions, but I am also grateful for Soccer X giving us this space to discuss this important matter. I know it's sensitive so many ways, as just Johnny was saying, but it's important for us to discuss about it because by the time we bring this to the table, everybody can get aware about what's happening and maybe come up with some ideas, some solutions, as you're saying about the stakeholders. Everybody has to discuss because it's a problem in the situation that society is going to see because we all love soccer, right? We want to watch them players, we want to see them playing well, we want to see the show that is not just a game, just you want to watch it. So what do you last perspectives that you guys want to say about it, discuss with us?
My final words are just basically we know sport is entertainment. We know it's it's a business. We know that it's people living in their passion. I just want to say let's not forget why people started doing what they're doing in soccer, because they absolutely love it. And wouldn't it be great to take them through their career where they still love it? So let's support that person to be that person through their career. So when they're done, they still love it.
Amazing, beautiful.
I think there's a lot of things that we can consider that we can implement, even just basic concepts within our ecosystems, within our clubs, for our players. I think one really good basic first step might be considering having a certified mental performance consultant. They are not mental health, but they do provide a very generalized overall wellness experience for our players that can translate both on the pitch and off, because our players, as Johnny mentioned earlier, are not necessarily real keen on coming forward if they have issues. So that is a good introductory. So I would advocate for something along those lines. Let's start small and then grow from there. And then I just think having a league and clubs that understand the power and the importance of your players being holistically well. And that's still conversation, and that's still things that we need to, today is one of those pieces, is being able to have that honest and open conversation. So that would be what I would end on, is take a few small steps and let's keep having conversations.
Yeah, I'm heartened we're even having this conversation, because I'm not sure this would have been a panel here 5 or 10 years ago. So it's refreshing that we're even talking about this. And
Like a relief.
yeah. And the more it is talked about, the more normalized it becomes. You know, I don't think I'm breaking new ground there, but the more I think players and really everyone will become more comfortable in seeking out the help that they need. And hand in hand in that is making sure that those resources are there and available, and players know that they're there and available. That's, you know, it's one thing to put the resources in place. It's another thing to make sure that those are being accessed and used, and that the people that they're targeting know that they're there. So, you know, and then I'm sounding like a broken record here, but you know, and my other panelists I think have touched on it too, but you know, it's just is really, as fans of the sport, as fans of sport in general, I really think it's important to remember the humanity of the people that we're watching on the field. That they are humans. They have just as much, if not maybe more, stress than the average person. It's different stress, it's different issues, but it's stress nonetheless. And so just, I'll leave it like that. Just everyone be nice to each other.
Amazing. I love that. I love the really optimistic person. So thank you so much for your time, for staying here with us today. And I feel so privileged because I have a lot of more questions, but I have their contact, so I will keep in touch with you guys. Like whenever I come up with some ideas and Anna, do you know something about it, Johnny? But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Soccer X, again for this opportunity, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.